This is John for the Everyday Fan. Tonight I have the pleasure of talking with the Dean of Chicagoland Wrestling Writers, Mike Pankow of Windy City Slam. How are you, Mike?
Doing good, John. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's the yearly wrap up. We're going to discuss 2024 and then kind of a little bit into 2025 this year. Let's start off with last year, the Chicago indie scene. Of course, that goes, Wisconsin, the whole Chicago area. So
Yeah.
let's start off with who would you say would be your picks for the best rookie slash young talent?
Yeah, in terms of rookies and young talent, there are a few people that kind of stuck out over the last year or so, and I'll throw a few names out there for you. Eddie Grayson and Jack Valor, a young tag team that came up through the CSW Academy, and they've been pretty much everywhere in the Chicagoland area. And in fact, they may already be CSW Tag Team Champions by the time this episode releases, as they are wrestling for those titles over in Franklin Park. And they're an impressive team. Uh, Eddie's dad has been involved and have been a big fan for many years, and I just see all kinds of potential in these two kids, and they're already really good. Maggie Lee is another name that's kind of exploded over the last year and a half on the Chicagoland scene. CSW, Second Wrestling, AAW Pro. She's amazing in the ring, and she's going to be one of your next breakout superstars. Sam Eli is a guy who I just interviewed for Windy City Slam podcast. He recently made his Rocket Pro Wrestling debut. He's another CSW Academy guy, really well spoken and really getting good in the ring. Very excited to see where his career goes. Robbie Reeves out of the Freelance Academy had a pretty good year last year, and he's coming up in the ranks. And speaking of the Freelance Academy, Reagan Lydale has really impressed me. And yeah, you got the shirt on. There you go. The Big Hoss Hippie has done some great things so far in freelance wrestling, and she's only going to get bigger and better over the next year or two. And I know she's had some experience with your friend Tommy Else. So, and then
Yeah,
the
I
other
couldn't I
name,
couldn't agree more about your choices so far.
and one more name for you, Brittany Brooks, a young 20-year-old who has already been the Dreamwave Women's Champion. She's just coming back from a knee injury. Really kind of a good young prospect as well.
Yeah, I met both Brittany and Maggie at last year's Squared Circle Expo. Both super nice to the fans. I'm not sure who it was. A couple of them got into a skirmish during the meet and greet, and one of them got thrown out, but it was all part of the fun. We got to get you out to the Squared Circle Expo at some point.
Yeah, I would love to try to make it out to that event. It's just, sometimes I think something else is actually happening family-wise on that weekend this year, unfortunately. So probably not this year, but maybe sometime next year or two. But you're referring to Maggie Lee, who I think got ejected from the
Yeah,
Squirt Circle Expo.
dove over the table and attacked one of the others. It might have been Brittany. I know
Yes.
it was Brittany was there. Roden was there, and the other, I can't losing their name, but anyway. So moving on, who do you see as from last year? Who do you see as the most improved from previous years?
Well, most improved. That's either in kind of stature or in just ring work as well, in my opinion. And I
Yeah,
have a few
however way you
names.
want to call it, my friend.
Yeah, I have a few names. Coder Hernandez really moved up into the main event scene at Freelance. He had a great match at Ego Pro over in Joliet last spring against Homicide, and he's had some great bangers at Freelance as well. He's also the Freelance He's the he's the secondary champion at freelance, the freelance legacy title. Yeah, I'm almost 50, so I start to forget things every so often. But he's the
Tell me
freelance
about it.
he's the freelance legacy champion, and he's been terrific the last maybe 18 to 20 months. He's been on fire. Rafael Quintero, only about 2 years in the business, but this kid has been winning titles everywhere. He's another CSW Academy guy. He's done some great things for AAW, Second Wrestling, Gali Lucha Libre, you name it. Jordan Cross from across the border in Kenosha. He's been in the business for about 6 years now, and every year he gets better and better. And another freelance academy guy I want to mention is Alfonso Gonzalez. He recently won the Freelance World Championship from Kylie Ray. He had the Red Star Medallion, which is kind of like a money in the bank type cash in. He's this goofy character. He's like the leader of Team Alfonso Dojo. He's a funny guy. He's a very much of a comedic wrestler in the sense of a Colt Cabana, but I think he's even much more than that. And he's also a great guy. And I love to seeing the fact that he's now the freelance world champion. And a guy that's been doing it for quite a while, but kind of has had a breakthrough the last 18 months or so, is Joe Alonzo. The
Ooh.
Oaklawn native is the AAW Heritage Champion. He's done some great things there. He used to be in the NWA, where I believe he was the Junior Heavyweight Champion. He's a cocky jerk, it's his character. But yeah, he's a guy that's definitely has a high ceiling. And then a few other young guys from the area. Jesus DeSafio from Rocket Pro Wrestling and Wrestle League. He's a champion over at Rocket Pro, the Intercounty champion. He looked really good a couple weeks ago over at Resolution down in Joliet. Shaq Jordan has been around for a while as well, but his last year or so has been amazing. He just put up a banger against Mustafa Ali at Wrestle League in December. Sabotaged Sean Logan over the last year or so at AAW and other places, and Second Wrestling as well, where he's the Maxwell Street Heritage Champion. He's been really impressive. And as I mentioned, Reagan Lydell, she just keeps getting better and better. Lily La Pescadita, who's only been in the business officially for about 2.5 years, but this CSW Academy product has been really good as well. She's really impressive. She's even dabbled a little bit in the NWA. And then another name that you may or may not have heard of is AMB, Austin Michael Baldridge. He's done some nice things at Galley Lucha Libre, Midwest Championship Wrestling, and a few other places. So those are some of my most improved breakout stars from the last year or so.
So this next one is a kind of bordering that same category, but a little different. If somebody says, "Hey, Mike, I want to go to a wrestling show," who's the best person to say? Who's the best female? Who's the best male? Like I would immediately go Ego, and I would go probably Mr. Cage or Kylie Ray
Hmm.
for the
Yeah.
women. Who would you say? Who are some of your picks?
Well, on the men's side, Storm Grayson, former freelance world champion, even though he may have some time off coming up due to surgery, but the kid's got it all. Over the last 2 to 3 years, he's really improved on the mic. His ring work is impeccable. He's a top of the card guy, and I would not be surprised to see him as a WWE ID guy within the next year or two once he recovers from his surgery. I mentioned Coda Hernandez already. We've extolled his virtues. Conan Lycan, two-time Chicago Style Wrestling champion. The Land Shark is really good. He's a Black and Brave graduate. Excellent. Davey Bang and August Matthews, probably the best tag team in the Chicagoland area. I also want to throw out former AAW World Champion Beef or Nels Garvin, however you know him as. And then current Power Entertainment Champion, it's your boy Mason Parks. Over the last couple of years has been really, really good, and he puts on banger after banger. Undeniable Chicago Bear Hug, Steve Michaels, your Rocket
Oh,
Pro Wrestling Champion. Great guy outside the ring, amazing talent inside the ring. Plus, we have the SCW Southland Championship Wrestling Champion, sharpshooter James Creed. He's an impressive guy. Reminds me of like a kind of a mix of Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart. Really good dude, really good in the ring. The King of the North, Gunner Brave, who you see at Rocket Pro Wrestling. The Dreamwave champion, Connor Hopkins, is pretty impressive as well. And another name I'm going to throw out there, the former CSW Metro Division champion, Victor Iniestra. So these are all top of the card type of guys that'll bring you in and you're going to enjoy watching them work. And then
okay,
on the
so
women's side,
oh,
I may mention
sorry.
a couple women. I don't want to forget them either because I have a couple on my list. You mentioned Kylie Ray. Yeah, once again, three-time freelance world champion and really great shape and came back after having a baby looking better than she did before, which is absolutely amazing. And then you mentioned Missa Kate as well, and she's just top of the food chain, top of the card type of talent, former second wrestling champion, your current CSW women's champion, really talented. And then Sierra, who's now the AAW Pro Women's Champion, coming from the Milwaukee area, does a lot of work in Chicagoland, and she's really impressive as well.
All good picks. I'm familiar with most of them, and if I'm not, I will be because I always follow your tips. One of the ones that you mentioned last year as to watch, now I just lost her name. Help me out now. The Bombshell. Sorry, the
Yes, Shelley
Bombshell.
the
So I mentioned
Bombshell
you
Benson.
mentioned her as
Yes.
someone to watch, and she's being touted as the one of the rookies of the year by several companies. So kudos to you on that one.
Yeah, she had a pretty good year as well. Under the tutelage of Vic Capri and the CSW Academy, she won numerous titles in several places, and she's still growing. I mean, she got into the business a little late in terms of age, but she's really worked very hard, and she's a terrific talent as well.
All right, so now it's 2025.
Mhm.
Who do you see as up and coming or breakout stars? Who should we look for in 2025 to be making headlines?
Yeah, and these are people I think are going to get even better and bigger and kind of start headlining shows more and more. And some of them already are, but some of them are going to get kind of pushed over the top, over the threshold. I mentioned Rafael Quintero. He's amazing. Maggie Lee is ready for a huge breakout. She's already had a few matches in TNA. That's how impressive she is. And I think she's on the verge of winning the AAW Pro Women's Championship. So stay tuned for that. Coda Hernandez, like I said, he's already the secondary champion in freelance, the freelance legacy champion. I think he's the guy that can take the ball and run as freelance world champion too at some point. Trevor Outlaw is always a guy that's just about right there. One of the best heels, actually, maybe even the best heel in the Chicago area. He doesn't do it he doesn't want to do it to be the cool heel. He just, he does it because he's a dastardly heel.
Hmm.
And he's the guy on the cusp of that main event scene and has been for the last couple of years. I think 2025 will be the year maybe he ends up winning the Freelance World Championship. And then I mentioned Sabotage Sean Logan, and he made a huge jump in 2024. I think that jump continues in 2025. And I think you're going to see Reagan Lydale in more main events as well this year.
Well, you know I'm a big fan of Reagan and Sean Logan. I see him winning a title in second wrestling. He's been kind of doing a gimmick with the interview show, and they kind
Yep.
of had him bouncing around a little bit. I think he's primed for a title run in there, and I think he's going to be a good champ at some point. So, and he's a great wrestler, super guy outside of the ring too.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping to get him back on my podcast very soon. I had him on about a year and a half ago, and it was a terrific interview.
Well, let's go with the big leagues now. WWE, Royal Rumble, male, female. Who do you got?
Yeah, let's start with the men's side. And I got some observations here. I want CM Punk to win. That's who I like to see win. But WWE might be hinting at John Cena winning in his final year of wrestling, just kind of build that up. But Cena has plenty of different ways to get into a big WrestleMania match, too. I mean, he's number one, he's John Cena. You could just throw him in a top match willy-nilly. But I think he could also win the Elimination Chamber to get into a title match as well. So this is why I want to see CM Punk win that. I want to see CM Punk in a main event caliber match at WrestleMania, in a championship match, and he's never won the Rumble, so I think it's time for him to win the Rumble. And in terms of surprises in the Rumble, I'm gonna throw out some names you might see on February 1st in Indianapolis. I think Joe Hendry for sure, and then I would love to see Matt Cardona, formerly known as Zack Ryder, even if it's a one-off. And then maybe even someone like a Nick Nemeth, formerly known as Dolph Ziggler. He's done some great things in TNA as their world champion, and I think it'd be kind of cool to see him come back as the wanted man in WWE, even if it's just, like I said, for a one-off. Going to the women's side, I'm thinking Charlotte Flair makes a surprise return and ends up winning it, putting
Wow.
her in a championship program for WrestleMania and maybe a couple of other dark horses or, people who could win it. I could see Liv Morgan possibly kind of getting back into the title picture that way, or even Jade Cargill if she's ready to return. And some surprises, and some of these that will shock you if they actually happen. Jordan Grace from TNA, who we've seen the last couple of years, and she might be ready to jump since I think her contract is winding down with TNA. Alexa Bliss is a possibility, as is Asuka, as they've both been out for various reasons. And the two I would love to see come back. Number one, our friend Lisa, Victoria.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
She just signed a Legends deal with them. Hopefully gets a Hall of Fame nod very soon, and hopefully gets some new merchandise and action figures because she definitely deserves it. She had a great career, and we all know her from the Squirt Circle restaurant in Chicago. So I would love to
Absolutely.
see her. And the other big surprise, who I really want to see, we haven't seen her in a ring really in 10 years, AJ Lee.
Man, you're right on. The two I would have named.
Yep. Absolutely. I would love to see AJ back in the WWE ring. Now that CM Punk is back in the good graces of WWE, obviously bring his wife back too.
Yeah, like you said, even if it's just a one-off, I think
Yeah.
she would get such a huge pop. And I think Jordan Grace might have, I would almost bet the house that she's going to be in the Rumble. I think she might have a good showing. I don't see her winning it just because it's too quick, too soon. She's too new, and I don't think they'd want to give it to her right away coming from TNA. But I think she's going to have a really good showing in the Rumble.
Yeah, if she indeed jumps to WWE main roster and debuts, I think that's a possibility she could win. But I think you're also right too. Maybe you kind of temper that expectation a little bit as well. But I think in the back of my mind, she might be a dark horse if she
I
indeed
totally
signs the
agree.
contract.
Totally agree. All right, let's go to AEW. What do we do with AEW? What do you see happening? I mean, people complain or people say, the ratings are tumbling, the attendance is down. I look at it, I see a bloated roster with really no focus on storylines. I see too many old veterans in main event pictures. What do you see?
It's kind of disappointing, really. I mean, I've seen a lot of criticism out there, and I think they're still going to be around. Tony Khan's got a lot of money. He's got his dad's money. I think Tony Khan needs some other voices in creative, whether it's like former wrestlers or veteran wrestlers, maybe they kind of steer him in the right direction, kind of like Vince needed for many years too. And he just ignored that input. And we saw the crappy WWE product for about a decade before he got shoved out the door. But yeah, Tony needs a little help. I love Tony's passion for the business. He
Yes.
loves the business. I totally think that, this is his dream and he's fulfilling it. But the talent is always top notch. And last year I said this on your show. Sometimes there's too much talent that Tony Khan doesn't know what to do with, like a kid with too many toys, plays with the new ones for a while, then forgets about them. It's word for word what I said here last year. And I stand by that. I mean, they just need to figure out something. Like I said, the talent is world class. I mean, you have a guy like Will Ospreay.
Absolutely.
You have Kyle Fletcher, who's really on the come up. I think the Young Bucks taking a step back is a good thing, not only for the main roster, but for the tag team division as well. Get some younger guys in there, which I thought they did a good job of for a while, but now they're kind of pushing those guys away, like a Ricky Starks or a Wardlow. I mean, those guys could have been top tier talents for whatever reason. They're just not being used.
That's just it. It's like they bring people up, whether they come from the E or they're young talent like that. They give them the big push, and then like 2 3 months later, where are they?
Yeah.
And,
It's like
and
Tony gets
you
tired of
called it
playing with those
last year,
toys.
and you're agreeing with it again this year. So maybe this year things will change.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's only January.
True, true. Let me put you the mind of a promoter. You're going to start a wrestling company in the Chicago area because there's wrestling companies starting it seemingly every week.
Yeah.
How do you balance bringing in the old talent, familiar talent, popular talent, with bringing in new people?
And when you say familiar talent, do you mean like veteran indie guys or guys
Yeah,
that
like in the Chicago
really?
then. I start a company, I bring in the Brothers of Construction, I bring in, Vic Capri, all great talent. I'm not knocking any of them. But how do you balance bringing those guys in with bringing in new guys, maybe even from out of the area?
I think a good balance, is required for a good show. I mean, yeah, you want a couple of well-known people, veterans, guys that can work, guys that people know. You got to get them in the door somehow. But then you also have to give the opportunities to the younger guys, the younger boys and girls. I think a good mix of talent, and you bring in that big name once in a while from a former WWE or former TNA or a former AEW or a current AEW or whatever. And you bring in a Frankie Kazarian, maybe you bring in a Ken Anderson or someone like a Hornswoggle. I think if you use those talents in the right way with younger talents, you're gonna get the rub and you're gonna get a pretty good show with it. But yeah, I think a mix of veterans and young talent is a good way to go for a new promotion.
I agree. All sound advice from the dean. Mike, it's always a pleasure talking wrestling with you, catching up, getting your thoughts, because you're all over the wrestling scene, and there's nobody that's got more knowledge and more passion for the business than you. I love Windy City Slam. I love the podcast. I love the interviews. Tell everybody where they can find out all about you, all about Windy City Slam.
Okay, yeah, for terms of Windy City Slam, there's the website windycityslam.com. There's coverage of local national wrestling, stories, event coverage, features, photo galleries, and a calendar of local events plus some of the big boy events too, like WWE, AEW, TNA, stuff like that. Windy City Slam podcast drops every Tuesday, and most of my focus has been on that over the last year or so. And recent guests have included Brandon Kendricks of Chicago Elite Pro Wrestling, which is a brand new company just starting up, as we were talking about. Then Sam Eli's been a guest recently, Jordan Cross, Kirby the Voice Alexander, who we send our thoughts and prayers toward him and his family. There's been a lot of things that have gone on with Kirby over the last year. He had the heart transplant about a year ago, and then he just lost his house.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a GoFundMe out there. Go ahead and support Kirby with your prayers or whatever you can. And then also I've had Maggie Lee on the show recently, superstar Steve Boz, Marche Rocket, Rabbi Jeremy Fine of Second Wrestling, Paulie Tomaselli, Robbie Reeves, and Benny Bogus. Also, I've had more well-known names such as Caleb Conley, formerly of TNA and currently with Juggalo Championship Wrestling, former AEW and WWE superstar Bobby Fish, former NXT stars and WWE stars Bobby Stevenson, formerly known as Damon Kemp, and Mojo Mutati, who was Mojo Rawley, as well as Eddie Edwards from TNA, have been guests on the podcast as well. In addition, for social media, go ahead and check us out on Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and our YouTube channel.
You are everywhere, my friend.
Yes.
And people should check it out. Again, you know, if you have one favorite company, if you have a lot of favorite companies, if you have a lot of favorite wrestlers, you do cover it all. And I'm always going back to the calendar of events because I'm looking for something to do, looking for who's wrestling where and all that. So I mean, you got kind of everything covered. It's a fantastic website. I encourage everyone to check out Windy City Slam, the website and the podcast. And with that, I thank you, man. And I look forward to seeing you at future events.
Absolutely, John. We'll see you down the line.
All right, buddy. Thanks.